Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. I'm going to give this a few moments to let people get on. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Please say hello. I'd love to know who is here on this Tuesday afternoon, March 2nd, or Wednesday, depending on where you're at in the world. So, hello. So this is a live Q&A. I am here to answer your questions. Hello, Isabel. So I hope you've brought lots of questions. So I don't really have a particular topic to talk about today to kind of get us started. I've been thinking about a few different things, but all of it felt like a much bigger conversation than to try to just talk for a few minutes at the beginning. Hello, Karen. Nice to see you. Well, be here with you, I guess. So welcome. So this is an opportunity to ask any questions that you have about mental health in general. If there's something that I don't feel like I have the expertise or experience in, then I will very happily let you know that. Because of course I don't know everything. But I am happy to try to answer whatever questions you may have. So emotional well-being, emotional healing, overall mental health or mental wellness, certainly trauma and trauma healing. One of the things that I thought about as I shared the post reminding people about this today was so many of the questions that have come up over the years, even in sessions, are people feeling really frustrated with themselves about how they know something, like they've read the books, they've listened to videos or whatever, and they know like what they need to do differently. But it seems that they continue to struggle with not being able to practice what they know. And so there are often a lot of questions that come up around that. So it was one of the things I specifically identified, why you continue to struggle, even doing or knowing things that are supposed to help. One of the biggest reasons that I think that is an issue is because of the judgment and shame that it ends up creating. Because most people that I speak with have a sense of what something is that they could do that might help them feel a little bit better, even if it's just for a period of time. They know that unhealthy coping skills are not great ways of coping, and so they know that it would be better to do something different. Yet they find themselves in that same situation over and over again, which obviously isn't good and it's not healthy. But the thing that creates the most impact in those moments is the judgment that you have about yourself after. The shame that you end up feeling because you should know better. Because maybe your sense of self comes from success. And if you fail at practicing what you know cognitively, then what does that say about you? Well, it doesn't say anything about you, not in a negative way anyway. It says that you are normal, ultimately. And there's a difference between healthy, unhealthy, and normal. Often, what is very normal isn't necessarily healthy. But we all do unhealthy things. And this is part of the reason I think that things associated with mental health and understanding our belief system, like that should start in grade school so that children can start to begin to understand those concepts. Because when we don't learn how and why we struggle, the ways that it shows up in our own mind, in our bodies, when we're told that we shouldn't feel the things that we feel, or to get over it, or whatever, big boys don't cry, or big girls don't cry, and boys don't cry at all. When we're told those things, it reinforces an idea that we hold on to. And changing what we learned, how we learned to show up in the world at a very young age, isn't something we just make a decision about. Sometimes we can make a decision that works temporarily for a few minutes, or maybe even a few weeks. But inevitably, you end up struggling with the same thing over again because you're not knowing something and even putting that energy in and being able to do it differently for a period of time isn't changing what's happening inside that causes you to do that in the first place. So it doesn't really work. But that's not because there's something wrong with you. It's because you've been told the way to do it is a way that doesn't actually work and actually can reinforce the negative things that you believe about yourself. So the whole system is messed up, which is why I think it's important to have open and honest conversations about the fact that we struggle and why we struggle, and the truth that there isn't a quick fix. There isn't any technique you're going to do that is going to fix the struggle. So I'll get off my little soapbox. Hello, Michelle. Hello, Sharia. Hi, Jamie. I had a pretty good week and still appreciate that so much. Then today was awful. Why can I not manage to overcome a bad day in the knowledge that there were good days before today? Great question. And something that I know everybody can relate to in some way, whether they would say the exact same thing to themselves or not. It's definitely something everybody can relate to. So there are two pieces to this. And one is that when you are in a process of growth and healing, you still believe on some level that you're unworthy, undeserving, or not enough to have those good days. Like you don't believe that you deserve to have those good days. And so when you have the good days, even when you can connect to them, it still feels kind of slippery, if that makes sense. If you imagine kind of being on ice and you can't really, like you can shuffle your feet, but at any moment your foot could slip and feel really unstable and maybe even fall. So when you're experiencing something good, something that feels good in the stages, particularly the early or stages of healing, you don't feel really kind of rooted in the truth that there are good days, in the truth that you are able to have good days, that you can feel maybe more confident, you can allow connection, you can receive support, you can feel excited. You don't feel really rooted in that yet. So it's very fragile in a sense. So when you have a bad day, and that could mean a lot of different things. It could be literally a very bad day, or it could be a day that you're just feeling pretty bad. But either way, when you then have that, because that has taken root already, right? You've lived your entire life with that set of beliefs and that experience of feeling like most days are kind of bad, or not being able to really feel fully integrated or embodied in the good days. So then when a bad day happens, that feels like where you belong in a sense. It's a reminder, not truly a reminder, but a subconscious reminder that that's truly what you deserve. And then when you have that thought, conscious or not, but that thought becomes present, when you have that type of thought, then those old beliefs come right back up to the top, and you don't trust the good, which makes the bad feel even worse. The other thing that is part of that is that when you are in a growth, particularly healing process, you tend to mitigate disappointment by not allowing yourself to really open to the possibility that you can really feel better, that you can heal, that you can feel deserving, and all of those things. As you're going through the process and you start recognizing that there are times or days when you actually begin to believe that maybe that could be true, it feels good. It feels hopeful. It feels maybe inspiring, maybe exciting. Maybe you're allowing yourself to imagine that things really could be different, that you could feel different. You could feel that freedom. You could see the view from the summit. And anytime, there's a reason that we tend to not feel hopeful when we've particularly experienced trauma, because if we don't allow ourselves to feel hopeful, then when we have a bad day, or every day feels like a bad day, it's expected. We know what to do with it, even if it doesn't feel good, even though it can feel horrible. It's what we expect. It's what we know. When you begin to allow yourself to connect with some of those other feelings, to feel hopeful, to imagine something could be possible, something different could be possible for you, you feel hope. You start allowing yourself to believe that maybe, even if not believe, just maybe it could be possible, it could be different. So you feel some of that lightness. And like I said, maybe even excitement. And then when you have a bad day and all those other beliefs come in that are reinforced, that you're not deserving or whatever, then when you've allowed yourself to feel hopeful, so if your normal place is here and you allow yourself to feel hopeful, you come up here. When you have the bad day, it's like you crash way down here. Well, if every day is here and you have a bad day, you don't really go down further because you were expecting a bad day. When you start feeling a little bit better and you have a bad day, because those thoughts come back, it feels like you crash way down. And notice I said it feels like you do. It doesn't mean you do, but it feels that way because you allowed yourself to have hope. So it's hard, you can't really hold on to the good days in those moments because they don't feel, because you tell yourself that they didn't really mean anything. You go back to the idea that it's not really possible for you to ever truly feel different because look, you had a few good days and now look where you're at. See, you can't ever really feel better. So you end up feeling even worse. So what you need to do then, or something that can be helpful then at that time, is remind yourself of basically what I was just saying, that process is normal, that having a bad day after having a few good days or a few good months even, that's normal. It's part of the process, which again is why the process of healing takes the time that it does, because we inevitably have to go through those ups and downs so that we can continue to strengthen the foundation, so that we can continue to practice when we're in those places that are particularly difficult. Because if everything is going good, you're not practicing pulling yourself out of the times that are difficult. So the difficult times are going to happen because you're still in the process. But each time that one of those times happens, you have then the opportunity to strengthen the foundation. But it is frustrating, for sure. Trying to heal, a lot scared of soul of problems, emotional feeling, and a neighbor rubbing his engine. I'm not sure, and then I'm not sure what all that means, but a traumatic brain injury on top of it. Trying to work with feeling triggers and emotional. That's a lot, Jamie, to be dealing with. It sounds like a lot of that is pretty, kind of brings up a lot of intense types of feelings. So I hope that I know Zoloft is prescribed, it has to be prescribed. I hope that you are also working with a therapist, because all of this stuff that you're talking about is stuff that is, because it feels so intense and there's so many different pieces, it really is important to have somebody that can really help you navigate all of those different pieces. And in the meantime, being really gentle with yourself, making sure that you're not kind of beating yourself up or judging yourself for struggling is really important. And I also think that community is incredibly important as well. So a therapist, I think, is really important, but also if you have the availability to participate in, and I don't know which type of group might be best for you at this particular time, but maybe some sort of support group, even online, could potentially be really beneficial as well. I'm glad you're here. Alexandria, it is. It's a chakra necklace. Thank you. I got it on Etsy. Any tips for dealing with nightmares? Mine are so much worse than starting the healing process. Yes, you're not alone, Via. I know, I remember you brought up the medication last time. So there's a lot of pieces to this that are going to be very specific for each person. But generally what I would say is trying to make sure that you have a good kind of self-care type related bedtime routine. So what I mean by that is really making a conscious effort to kind of wind down, doing some things that help you feel grounded, present, nurtured in some way, even if it's just you, but taking care of yourself, doing nice things for yourself, whether that's maybe taking a nice bath before you go to bed, or taking a few minutes to journal about maybe gratitude or something like that. So maybe you don't want to journal about really difficult things right before you go to bed, but some things, a routine, an actual routine. So ideally same time every night, but a routine that helps you feel present, that helps you feel nourished, and safe before you go to bed. I don't, there's a bunch that you can find online, I'm sure. I have a meditation album that I have. It's about a 30-minute guided meditation, I think, on creating refuge. And it's a guided meditation that takes you through a process of creating a sense of safety. And that meditation can be helpful to feel safe generally, but it can also be helpful to do before you go to bed, to help really kind of regulate your system a little bit, to feel kind of safe and present. So grounding and a routine that helps you feel grounded and safe before you go to bed. In addition to obviously therapy and healing generally, but I think in terms of what you can practice on a regular basis, I think that would be good. Another thing that you can practice, and this doesn't have to be as a journal thing, but it can sometimes be helpful in that way, is literally imagining. So particularly if your nightmares tend to be the same kind of nightmare, so it doesn't have to be the exact same thing that happens, but the same theme, kind of. Whatever that happens to be, recognizing what is it about that you're kind of feeling or thinking about through the day, or that might be present for you, even if it's not conscious. So whatever that fear is, whatever that uncertainty is, imagining and actually being able to say to yourself, okay, this is here and I'm working on healing it, but for now I'm going to set it up on this shelf, or I'm going to put it in a box and put it in the back of the closet, or I'm going to set it outside. And so that can be kind of metaphorically. You can think of doing that. You can think of putting it in a box and locking it, or you can do that literally. And obviously what you put in there may be nothing, but it's the idea of actually having a box, putting it in there, setting it somewhere. So you're acknowledging that there's maybe some fear there, while also being able to say, okay, I know that it's there, but I'm going to put it to the side for now, but I will address it. Because again, remember, when we're in a place of denial or avoidance, it's going to creep back in a lot. And often that is in a dream. If you can be very conscious about saying, okay, I'm not denying, I'm not avoiding, but this is part of my self-care, and I will come back to this, then energetically it can create a bit of a shift there. For some people, it feels weird and it doesn't work. But if that's something that might work for you, then that's something you might consider trying. Sorry, this just scrolled up quite a bit. Hi, Renee, welcome. So my path of education was a bachelor's degree in social work and sociology with a minor in psychology. And then I went on to get my master's in social work. So in terms of education, that's my educational path. And then I became a therapist, working with children who experience trauma, and then working in a rape crisis center for several years. And then opened my own practice, still working almost predominantly with trauma survivors. That's been 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. So hopefully that helps. I actually have a video here on YouTube, Social Work in Private Practice. Obviously I'm talking about social work specifically, but there's that there too. It's an older video, quite a bit older video. I sabotage everything. So Ashley, I'd like to take a moment. How many people can relate to that idea? I sabotage everything, or I screw everything up. I know I've said things like that to myself without a doubt in the past. But Ashley, I'd like you to take a moment. Is it really true? Like, is it absolutely true that you sabotage everything? Everything? Really, I don't think that's probably true. I don't know that that can actually be completely true. And I'm saying that because it is really important for us to be aware of the power of what we're saying. And if you are saying to yourself, if you believe that you sabotage everything that you do, then it's going to feel pretty hopeless. It's going to feel very shameful. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. Sabotaging is also something that most people do to some degree or another, kind of regardless of history. The extent to how we sabotage or the ways that we sabotage may vary quite a bit on a spectrum of things that we can do. But self-sabotage is something that comes up for a variety of reasons as well. And here, it's really important to recognize the judgment and the shame that's coming. What are you saying to yourself about the fact that you sabotage? Because that is going to have ultimately even more significance than the sabotage. It's going to reinforce the impact and the beliefs that you've been carrying around. So the sabotage obviously isn't good, certainly isn't leading to what you desire. But when you beat yourself up about it, that furthers the impact that it has on you. And again, self-compassion, this is why self-compassion is so incredibly important. Because if in those moments when you sabotage, instead of beating yourself up and feeling shame, if you were able to meet that with compassion, with compassionate curiosity instead of judgment, what you're left with is maybe still feeling disappointed about however you sabotaged or the outcome of what that means, but you're not left feeling shame about it. You're left with a sense of, well, self-compassion, which feels a whole lot better. It feels tender, it feels loving. It feels a whole lot better than shame and judgment. Hi, Cheryl. I'm glad that you got it. I sabotaged myself a lot when I was in school, both primary and speaking of educational path, I sabotaged myself. I quit high school. Got kicked out of high school a couple times. So I can definitely relate to that. But I also sabotaged when I was getting my degrees in various ways. I did complete, so I didn't completely sabotage myself, but I sabotaged school almost every semester in some way or another. It's a really hard thing to break from because it becomes such a patterned kind of thing that we do, but we can do it differently as we heal. But it does take very intentional effort and it does take support, I believe, too. We can't do it on our own. Going back to the question about having good days and then that bad day that feels so bad and it's hard to hold on. It makes sense. It feels like the good days were something I stole that I wasn't meant to have, and the bad day is the consequence to that. That's a really powerful way of describing that. Yeah, so if that's what you believe, of course it's going to feel horrible, right? But that's not the truth. That is never the truth. My current therapist did a wellness, darn it. My current therapist did a wellness check on me because I haven't been taking the past few sessions. And she told them about the man I live with sexually assaulting me. And I don't know how to trust her or trying to talk to her. Oh, Lindsay, this is hard. So feeling betrayed by a therapist is something that a lot of people can relate to. This particular kind of situation, I know that there are people that can relate to that as well. But the idea of feeling betrayed is definitely something that everybody can relate to, or most people can relate to. And I think even if there isn't an actual betrayal, it can still absolutely be feeling betrayed. And Lindsay, obviously, I don't know the exact situation. I don't know your therapist, but what I will say in this situation is it makes sense that you feel the way that you do. The uncertainty about ever being able to trust her or the belief that you could never trust her again makes sense. However, if you trusted her before, if you've had a good relationship with your therapist, this is actually an opportunity that can really strengthen your relationship with your therapist. And I want to explain what I mean by that. So I said, if you've been betrayed or you feel betrayed, and those are not the same thing, right? So in this type of situation, and again, I'm just basing this on a very general thing because I don't know all the details. Your therapist may have felt an obligation ethically, but even more importantly, she may have felt an obligation to you. She may have felt true concern for your well-being. And as a result, she may have made this choice. And again, I'm not saying that that is exactly the case because I don't know, but I do know that therapists find themselves in these situations quite often. And there is an ethical, even licensure responsibility when in situations like this. And sometimes you have to make decisions as a therapist that are not easy decisions, that can be heartbreaking decisions, but they are what is best for you as well. And so being able to go back and talk to her about how you're feeling, talk to her about your hurt, your disappointment, how you feel betrayed, how you feel scared, how you don't ever want to see her again. Talk to her about those things. Because when you have a situation where you feel a disconnect, a painful thing that comes up with your therapist, if you can talk about it, if you can work through it, that is one of the most incredibly healing things that you can experience because it teaches you, you live, you feel it in your body that you can experience that whole range. That even somebody that you allowed yourself to trust or were leaning into trusting can do something that feels very hurtful. But if you can have a conversation about that, if you can understand that her decision, and again, I'm making an assumption here, if you can understand that her decision was based on her concern for you, then it's not going to be easy because that self-defense thing is there. But if you can lean into accepting that that could be true, that it wasn't a betrayal of you, it wasn't her not taking your confidence seriously, but that she was concerned about you, it will take some time. But when you can accept that, when you can trust that, or begin the process of trusting that, then what can happen in that relationship is incredibly powerful. Incredibly powerful. So please, please don't completely give up. And if you intuitively, so not just the fear and the self-protection, but if intuitively, maybe you didn't trust her that much before, or something like that, then maybe get a different therapist. But please don't let this be the end of your healing process with a therapist. Please, please, please don't let that be the case. Going back to the idea of nightmares. So you feel fine before you go to bed, which is good. I'm glad about that. But there can be, even if you feel fine and there's not a lot floating around that you're conscious of, once you go to bed and you're not conscious in that conscious state any longer, then anything that might have been subconscious can come up. So if you can do some of those things that I talked about before you go to bed, even if you're feeling fine, then it can help calm that subconscious a bit as well. Um, I think I missed something here. Sorry. Um, okay, I think that's in response to somebody else. Oh, if she wanted to do a wellness check, she could have just said she was concerned you might self-harm. No, self-harm is not enough to get to actually breach confidentiality. It would have to be that she thought you might kill yourself. It has to be imminent, serious, significant risk of harm. And usually that means death. And I don't know where your therapist is, but you live in the US. I'm 100% positive, I think. So generally, and every state is different, but generally it is, self-harm would not be enough to get somebody to go out. Um, Lindsay, another thing here that I might encourage you to look into is, if there isn't any place else that you can go, look into a domestic violence shelter. Even if this isn't an actual relationship, like a partnership that you're in, you might be able to have access to some resources through a domestic violence shelter, because it's somebody that you're sharing a home with. So it's still considered, can't think of the word I'm looking for, but it might still be something that they could help you with in some way. So that might be worth checking into. Um, where I live, it's mandatory to get COVID tested if you want to go to uni and many other places. I feel like my body is being threatened to be violated again, like it happened when I was abused. There are so many things about this past year with COVID that are triggering, that are bringing up a lot of things for people that maybe have never bothered them before, or they thought they healed or were over. There really is a lot about this that is very present. Um, yeah, Lindsay, I would encourage maybe a domestic violence shelter to see if they can offer some resources for you. So I'm just looking through comments to make sure that I didn't miss anything. So I think that I've addressed everything. Oh, there's another one. My mother, my constant bully, is now very old and ill, but I still feel angry and betrayed, but also now guilty for that. Oh, Michelle, this is such a huge issue for so many people. And it just made me think about the mother wound and the group on that. This is a really difficult one because there's so many layers that create a lot of complexity to this issue. First of all, know you're not alone. It really is so complicated for so many reasons. Recognizing that it's okay to be angry, to feel what you feel, to feel betrayed, to feel angry about that. It is okay to feel that. The guilt in part comes from allowing yourself to really feel something, to acknowledge something that has been really difficult to fully acknowledge and accept, to really honor for yourself. So when you're trying to do that, the guilt creeps in so that you don't do that. The guilt kind of serves to keep that at bay. The guilt doesn't feel good, so you want to avoid that. You're used to these other feelings. So it feels better to feel these feelings that you're a little bit more used to than to feel guilt for feeling even worse about who you are. So we continue to repeat those cycles over and over again. There's nothing for you to feel guilty about. You know, whatever your anger, like if your anger drives you to pull back from your relationship with your mother, there's nothing to feel guilty about with that. Now, obviously, if your anger causes you to be abusive in some way to your mother, that's not good. But I don't think that that's what you're saying here. It's just that you're struggling with the feelings that you're having, feeling bad for having them. And one of the things, you know, what's so interesting about this is that no matter, and this is true for being angry at parents, I think in general, whether they abuse you or not, but if you have some anger towards a parent, no matter what is going on for that parent, so wherever you are in the stage of life, you'll find a reason to feel guilty. So you shared here, your mother is now very old and ill, so it's not okay for me to feel angry, right? If she were younger, you'd come up with a different reason why it's not okay to be angry. If she were not ill, you'd come up with a different reason. So no matter where we are in the stage of our lives or their lives, instead of feeling what we feel, instead of putting responsibility where it belongs, instead of acknowledging the truth of how we feel betrayed, we feel guilt instead, so that we don't allow ourselves to go there. But the guilt, we will always find a reason to believe that it's not okay to feel what we feel. Just like for anybody who's been abused, you'll always find a reason why it was your fault. Doesn't matter what the circumstances, you will always find a reason that you believe somehow you are responsible. The guilt here works the same way. So even if your mother were 50 years old and in great health and was running marathons, you'd find a different reason to feel guilty. She's in the prime of her life. She should be happy. Or she didn't mean it, or whatever. There's always going to be a reason which says that the guilt isn't really about doing anything wrong. The guilt is an automatic response to allowing yourself to really feel what is present for you so that you don't feel it. But that is definitely something a lot of people really struggle with. Hello, Ella. Welcome. So I hope all of that makes sense. I will be coming back in 2 weeks, same time, for our next Q&A. So I have gotten some feedback about I actually sent out a newsletter and I posted it on social media. I've gotten some feedback about what I might offer or what I might be doing to connect with all of you. And I'm not sure what's going to come out of that yet, but stay tuned. The Q&As are something that people find helpful. So I don't know what that's going to look like. So I'm doing another one in a couple of weeks, and then I'm going to reevaluate, see where we go from there. So I don't know if I'm going to keep doing the YouTube live Q&As like a couple of times a month, or maybe spread them out a little bit more, or create a separate place to do more lives maybe. So stay tuned for all of that. I'm glad it was helpful, Lindsay and Michelle. But the thing that came up the most, or the feedback that I got, the thing that stood out the most for people was the possibility of doing a group around self-compassion. So that may be where the direction that I had, but I'm not sure yet. Is it my fault for going to his, even since my parents told me I wasn't supposed to? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Since you said, since my parents told me not to, I'm guessing that you meant as a child. Absolutely not. And the reason for that, or one way to think about it, I guess not necessarily the reason for that, but one way to think about that is, if a child does something their parents tell them not to, or even if their parents don't necessarily tell them specifically not to do something, but they know that maybe they shouldn't do it, and they do it anyway, what should the consequence of that be? If your parents tell you not to go to your neighbor's house and you go anyway, should the consequence be being sexually abused or assaulted, hurt in some way? Or should it be being grounded or having something taken away from you? So even when you do something that you're not supposed to do, even when you do something that really isn't very good, like you know you could get in a lot of trouble for it if you did it, and you do it anyway, should the consequence to that be sexual abuse or assault, or to be hurt? Never. So no, it is not your fault. The first time I ever kind of thought of something in that way was very early on when I worked in rape crisis. I had a client, a teenager, who I think her first year of high school, and she went to a party and she drank and she was sexually assaulted. And I remember talking to her afterwards, and she, kind of like guilt, right? You're going to hold on to anything you can. What she held on to make it her fault was that she drank, and she's underage and she's not supposed to drink. She knew better, right? So it's my fault. It's my fault that I was sexually assaulted because I was drinking and I shouldn't have been drinking. Really? Think about that. Being a teenager and drinking, being a teenager and drinking, or being at a party that you're not supposed to be at. Should there be consequences to that? Sure, of course. Those consequences should not be sexual assault. Never. Doing things that you know are not good for you is never an excuse, never a reasonable consequence, is never to be hurt, to be assaulted. Never. But we hold on to that. It's one of the ways that we can continue to feel responsible. But never is that true. Here for a self-compassion group. Yes. Hi, Jack. Good to see you. Or here, see your name here. Hi, Lou. Thanks for being here. Good, Ella, I'm glad. Okay, well, thank you all for being here, and I will look forward to connecting with you again in a couple of weeks. If you are on social media and you do not follow me, please follow me on Facebook, is where I do most of my sharing. You can look up my name, Peggy Oliveira, the public profile page, or Courageous Journeys. I'm going to start sharing more, I think, on my Peggy Oliveira page. But for right now, either one of those is good. Obviously here on YouTube, and I share a bit on Instagram, but I'm much more active on Facebook. So, oh, Nancy, I hope those are tears of release in some way. Good. All right. Well, thank you all for joining me, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye.